All right, welcome everyone. We are going to get started on time as always. Welcome to Strive's Coaches Corner. This is a every 2-week thing that we do at noon, where we huddle up for 20 minutes and we share out some tips, tools, and practices that are both relevant right now, and as our kind of social distancing measures continue and change, and also to apply kind of in what will be the new normal. So as an organization, we really focus on social emotional learning and culture creation. We are very, very passionate in not just helping coaches and athletes develop soft skills that are so important in life, but also to ensure that we intentionally create, cultivate, and reinforce the culture within which they are taught and learned. As coaches, we know this, right? Like the old adage of like, do as I say, not what as I do, doesn't work, right? When we think about what it is we want, what we want our team to do, we need to be able to define it. We need to be able to then align on it, and then we need to know how it's happening, right? And we need to be able to kind of say, did it happen, yes or no? And that's culture, right? And that's what we really want to dig into today, right? And that's our mission, right? That's our mission, and now more than ever, how you lead matters. And how you lead matters is not just one day waking up and being like, I can do this, or I know this, or I had an experience and now I know how to do something. It's ensuring that we are utilizing our platforms, our experiences, our teams as a way to teach really intentionally some really important skills, right? Empathy, self-awareness, active listening, communication, conflict resolution. These are all things that we've for years known sport helps with. Where sport ultimately really makes a difference is when coaches, administrators commit to taking these things at the forefront and not just hoping they happen, right? It's as if you set up a drill and you just say, all right, we're going to go through this drill for 10 minutes, but you're not tweaking, giving feedback, ensuring that the drill is set up to specifically teach that skill, right? And be like, okay, we're shooting, if I'm a soccer coach, we're shooting from outside the box for 10 minutes. When we get to a game, we're not finishing from 5 yards out. We're like, ooh, why have we not got that skill, right? Well, we didn't intentionally practice it. We didn't give our players feedback. We didn't give them a forum that was a similar to game-like situation to do that. And I want to push you all to be doing that with these skills as well. And so that's what we want to talk about today is how do we create and hold cultures that are true to our core values and the things that we want to develop and the things that we want to see in our players and our program and our institutions, right? A lot of you already have a lot of this information. You've been trying this, you've been reading, you've been listening, you've been molding your programs to be ones of integrity and flourish and success, right? And so what I hope to be able to do is to add maybe some tools to that toolbox, maybe sharpen some of those tools, maybe add some new ones, right? That's the hope of our quick time together. So what I'll do is just kind of go through some of the beliefs, some theories around culture and creating intentional values-based cultures, and then just some tips and tricks and tools that we at Strive have been doing, we've seen other programs do, and hopefully you all can draw from them, right? Again, it's the expectation is always be a sponge, right? Like see how much of this information you can take in, and when the moment arises, squeeze it out. Let it out, right? It might be now, it might be in December, it might be next year, it might be in an individual conversation. I don't know, but I really, really believe this information will stick, will be soaked up, and will be helpful. Will be helpful to utilize. Okay, so I think the first point we have to think about is the word culture gets thrown around a lot, right? Like good culture, bad culture, this, that, great, but like, so what is culture, right? So when you look at these two brands, pretty not what you're expecting from a coach right now, right? You start to think like what comes to mind with Chick-fil-A? Like what comes to our mind with McDonald's? And a lot of people, closed on Sunday, chicken, McDonald's. Somebody always says broken ice cream machine, like no matter what, right? But quick, fast, cheap, McDonald's, right? My pleasure, Chick-fil-A, those kind of things, right? What people are saying, what people are doing, the product, the consistency. That's what comes to mind for most of you. Same with coffee, right? People have their preferences and people swear by some of these preferences up and down, right? Starbucks was created to be this third space, right? Not work, not home, but like in between. Dunkin' Donuts, quick, fast, ready to go, right? A little bit more basic basic menu. Starbucks has like 7 secret menus, and you've got to know the passcode and the secret dance to get there, right? Like these small things that you're thinking about, what is a brand? Those are pieces of culture, right? So imagine I just put up your school logo, right? Or your program's logo, and beneath it, a program in your conference. Like what gets triggered? What do you think? Not just what you want it to mean, but like, what does it actually mean? What, like if somebody else was given those 2 options, what words and phrases and stories and aspects of your brand would they put down? That's your culture, right? That's what creates culture, right? It is, if we think about a person's character being how they behave, the culture is then that cumulative effect of those individuals. So when you go into Chick-fil-A, right, 99 times out of 100, they will be the most smiling, happiest, clappiest people in the world, right? The collective behavior is that across the band. McDonald's, you're not sure what you're going to get, right? You might get somebody who's really up to it, really nice. You might not, right? But so therefore their collective behavior doesn't add up to something that you think about when it comes to their brand. So when you think about your team, it's fine if you're like, this is what we stand for, this is our mission, this is our core values. 9 times out of 10 though, what are the behaviors of the individual doing? Because that is your culture, right? And so 9 times out of 10, when we think about culture, we think often reactively, like, oh, this is going badly, or this is happening, I want us to be more this. What I want us to think about is culture being a proactive measure, something that we intentionally design, we intentionally define, we intentionally align on, and then we model as coaches, and we work with our teams on, right? Those are the steps, right? Culture happens one of 3 ways. You either don't design it and just whatever the most dominant person is doing, people follow and replicate. That can be good or bad. Or there's multiple kind of dominant people. So there's multiple cliques involved. You sometimes see this on teams, like some people behave this way, some people behave this way, and there's a cliques. Or you as a coach, right? Or administrator come together and say, like, this is what we want. This is what we're going to reinforce. This is what we're going to do. And then you continuously remind and tweak and evaluate, like, are we doing it? Are we doing it? Is it happening? Right? So what are the pieces of culture, right? What is, so it's not just like, oh, let's do some random things and that's culture. These are the small constructs that add up to all of these things. So first and foremost, you're asking yourself, what is a core value? Why does it matter to me? What does it look like? How will I know it's happening? And these are the ways you'll know. So let me give you some examples, right? So Messiah College, really great book, The Messiah Method, right? Talks about how on their team, they believe in servant leadership, right? In fact, their institution really believes in this, really grounded in this. So it's not just something they say, right? Although it is, right? It's rules and activities and power structures they put in place so that seniors are actually the ones who carry the equipment. Seniors are the ones who pick up the water bottles. Seniors are the ones who are expected to, quote unquote, be the dog, to be the lowest of the hierarchy. They are there to serve the other team, right? So they don't just say it. There's not just a phrase, right? It is a part of the culture. And we know it is happening because if we go to their practice, we now know what expectation to look out for, right? In fact, the author of the book says, like, that's what they noticed. They were like, wow, I see this happening. And the coach was able to say, yeah, that's very intentional. We did that, right? We can see it's happening. Here at Strive, right? When we think about symbols and artifacts, we look at some of our core values and we have these fun, nichey things, right? That nobody else knows what they really mean, but for us, they're really deep and meaningful. So I always have an Etch-a-Sketch with me. We always talk about how Etch-a-Sketch is a good definition of life that can just make a mistake and shake it up and go again, right? Our core value of sticking with it, having a growth mindset, that's what that's a reminder of, right? We check in on each other's fuel tanks. We've all done a terrible artistic job of building our own fuel tanks, right? But we check in every single day, multiple times a day, how's your tank, right? Because one of our core values is filling tanks, right? So these examples I'm giving you, they're not necessarily foolproof. They're not what you should be doing, but it's what you should think about. Is like, what are some of the quirky things we do? And do they align to what we want to be doing? What do they align to what we stand for, right? Other symbols and artifacts in the world, when you think about the Tour de France, yellow jerseys, right? Yellow jerseys for the person who's in the lead at the moment, right? That's something they established because they want to recognize the person who is in the lead. That's something they believe in, right? What is something you're recognizing within your team and how you're doing it, right? That's culture, and doing it regularly. And it's not a one-off. Every day, every moment that you're doing it. It's doing funny things, but knowing why. So we hold true to choose laughter. This, in fact, is a picture of our then executive director, but a co-founder of our organization, going out during one of our summer camps dressed as Gumbo, right? Because it was a reminder that, like, while we take what we do really seriously, we don't take ourselves seriously. For others, this kind of behavior might not make sense at all, but it's something we stand for. It's something we believe in. Right? Credos and Slogans. The Ravens, I use this one all the time. This is plastered on their training facility, giant letters, right? They want to reinforce their focus and commitment to the moment, right? What's important now, right? And that's an internal phrase. And some of you may have seen that externally, but it means something. And if you go and experience their culture, you hear them say it and you're like, oh, I know what they stand for. Couple more examples, right? Couple more examples of little pieces that add up to building an intentional culture, not just doing things for the sake of doing things, right? For those of you who know, the All Blacks, the New Zealand rugby team, one of the greatest rugby teams, sports teams of all time. If you're a reader, look up the book Legacy by James Kerr, really great book on culture. But they do the haka before every single game. It's incredible to watch. It's an old Maori war dance, but for them, they believe in tradition. And so they will make everyone feel and understand that tradition is something that team culture stands for. They do it on a worldwide stage. Another great example is they believe in sweeping the shed. That's a phrase they use, and they do that by always having to leave a place better than they found it. The captain of their World Cup rugby winning team was actually late to a press conference when they had just won the World Cup. And everyone asked him, where have you been? He's like, I was sweeping the shed. I was just cleaning up. I had to clean up. Right? So everyone was experiencing and understanding that culture, right? They could see and feel what the core values are, right? When you think about practices and routines, right? What are things you're doing regularly? Strive. At our summer camp, every night we give out a red shirt for the person who embodied the theme of the day that day, right? Right? That's a habit, that's a tradition, that's a routine, because it represents the things that we believe in, the things that we hold dear. Okay, and then language and vocabulary. What are the words and phrases that your teams use, right? In this modern day, what is the hashtag, right? And is it just a hashtag? It's like, how is that every moment? How is that being lived out? How is the external person coming into your program going, I heard you say this a lot. Like, what does that mean? You go, oh, like, I'm glad you picked up on that. That actually means this because this. I keep hearing you guys say brush it off at Strive. Oh yeah, that's our mistake ritual, because we believe in having a growth mindset and sticking with it. So it's a phrase and action that we use to really commit to that. And so I give a lot of Strive examples because that's what I know best. However, it's not because we are on this pinnacle. And in fact, I'm not here to tell you what you should do or even what your core values are. What I want you to start thinking about is, like, what are our core values? How can they look like in action? Or what are the things we're already doing? And do they represent our core values? I always use the example is coaches, do you know what stories your players are telling the new players coming in, even if it's in jest or in fun, right? Like what are the stories? Do they tell about the really, really hard fitness test? Okay, cool. So like, what is that story? Like, does that represent hard work, achievement? Are they talking about the social side, the going out? Nothing wrong with that, but who are they holding up? Who are they telling a story about? And what is that story saying about what is right or wrong in your culture, right? Are they talking about the time that coach got really, really angry because of X? And it's therefore a warning to be like, that's our expectation, therefore is Y, right? That's culture, right? The stories, right? So all those parts that go into it. So then what are the tools and tricks that we can get to building and sustaining a really intentional culture? So one of the things I did with the brand logos, we do this as a gallery walk. In your locker room, in a space, right? Hang up a bunch of different brands, right? Different sports teams, different logos from schools in your conference, if you want to be controversial, right? And have your young people write Post-it notes or write on the logo what comes to their mind, right? And then have a discussion like, why did you think that? What made you think that? And then slap up your logo and be like, so what do we write in here? Have other people in your department do it for your team and tell your team. You might learn good things, you might learn some not so good things, but at least you're then talking about like, wow, it's our culture, this is who we are, this is what you represent on campus, this is what you represent to the outside world. You may think you're doing one thing, but know that this is what's being screamed out. Okay, so that's an activity. It's taking this, right, and working with your team, being like, hey, what are we already doing? Like, what are some of the symbols and artifacts? Like, I know that a great program we work with has a stinky penny, right, that they give out to the person who worked the hardest to practice that day, right? And that gets passed around. A really cool tradition, really cool symbol and artifact, because they care about hard work, right? And they define that, right? And they align it and they reinforce it, right? So utilizing this with your program. Where are we at already, right? Where are we going? I like to do a front and back of jersey exercise. So we always have this a lot of people talk about it's not about the name on the back, it's about the name on the front. I don't know if you have the massive budgets to even have names on either side, but let's go with this, right? Is that you have your players, like, write all the things that they think the logo on the front represents, right? What they stand for, what's important, what it means, but then also write, what does the name on the back represent? What do you as an individual represent? What do you care about? What's important? And then making them understand that as a team, what's written on the back actually influences what's on the front. That the front can't be true if the back isn't aligned, right? So if all your players have written certain things on the back, and they're completely different to what's on the front, then your culture is not going to be what you think it is, good or bad, right? So it's just figuring out, like, what do you stand for? What do you believe in? What do you do? How do you do it, right? Those multiple actions, it's the sum of the actions of the individuals. That is your culture, right? Find that out front and back. Have your young people, have your players create the team logo, right? And no, don't tell marketing departments and all that. They'll get very upset. It's not an official brand. But can they come up with, like, what is your team program logo? And you kind of, like, with the name crests, there might be different parts of it. And there might be a story behind it and a core value behind it. And that's something that they can hold dear and that's true to them and that they stand for, right? Something to think about, a cool activity. And always remembering that, that for the culture to be effective, it comes first that you define it, you align, then you model, you as a coach model it, and your staff model it, and your captains, right? And everyone starts modeling it. Then you get the right personnel, right? As you're recruiting, right? You know what you're recruiting, you've defined it, we're modeling it, and you start getting the people who from the back of their jersey aligns with what's in the front of the jersey, right? And then when that starts happening, you start recognizing it. You start making rewards for it, right? You have to reward the behaviors you want. That's a type of feedback. You want to so not just giving out awards for scoring the most goals or getting the most points, right? It's the reward, like I said, stinky penny. It's the person who worked the hardest. At Strive, it's giving out the red shirt for the person who showed the most empathy that day, right? How are you recognizing and rewarding the behaviors you want so that they repeat and they are part of your culture, right? It's having people understand that it starts with themselves, right? Each individual must take these actions, right? So that it becomes a group and then an organizational thing. Your culture is the actions of each of those individuals along the way, acting out those core values. You can influence and suggest and build structures for them to do so, but then you've got to incentivize and reinforce when people are acting those out, okay? And this is not to say that your players are like, this is what we're going to do, and it's anarchy, right? But it's so that you have an environment that's positive and supporting. But because you've defined it and you've outlined what it is you do and why, you can now have the high expectations and hold people accountable to it. If we said X matters, then we must do Y. If we said our education matters, then we must work towards having a GPA of X, Y, and Z, and therefore we will do study hall. Therefore we will have tutors. Therefore we will have a mentorship program that is academically bound. Therefore we will have punishment if you do not attend class, because we have said that a core value of ours is high academics, right? So building those processes and procedures out. It's being really clear in what we mean, like good academics, like what does that mean? Giving a point range, saying what you mean. What does hard work mean? Is it scores on a fitness test? Is it what they're doing in practice? Is it what they're doing in the weight room? You've got to define it so we can align and so we can then know what behaviors we got to do. So you say hard work is 3 times a week in the weight room doing X, Y, and Z. We can say, did you do it? And if you did, what is the recognition for that? And if you didn't, what is the consequence for that, right? And repeatedly, it now becomes a culture of that you are a team that works hard by being in the weight room. Again, that might not be your definition, but you brought clarity to it, right? And when we think about these common words that we use when we're creating culture, like hard work, success, commitment. If those are core values of yours, break them down, make them really tangible, and make them credos and slogans and stories and artifacts that continually reinforce so that your players, your staff, and then those around you understand what your culture stands for. They're experiencing it actively. So the last little bit that we'll get into is just finishing up here, is it goes back to this Simon Sinek, Start With Why. Check it out. Really great read, really important podcast, right? People don't care what you do, they care why you do it. Nobody cares that I have an Etch-a-Sketch, although you might think I'm really cool because I have one, right? But at Strive, people care, right? But once I explain that to other people, like, don't worry about the Etch-a-Sketch. I just believe in allowing you to make mistakes. I believe in you growing from your mistake, and I'm going to reinforce that. People care about that. Etch-a-Sketch is fine. They can't care why I have it, right? So what matters most? What does it look like? And if you don't know, ask yourself 5 times, right? Say to yourself, what does it look like? Hard work. Oh, it looks like weight room. All right. What does it look like? 3 times in the weight room. What does it look like? 3 times in the weight room doing X, Y, and Z. What does it look like? Push, 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 right? Then already decide what's going to make it challenging to make that happen. And then what do you need to overcome those challenges, right? So if it's GPA, if it's scoring goals, if it's community service, whatever it is, define it. What, how? And then, okay, time management, that's going to be a difficulty. Do we need a tutor? Do we need to set up regular study hall? Do we need to set aside days to do community service? We're not scoring as many goals as we should, right? You can already build those tools in, and it becomes an intentional part of your culture rather than something you just randomly did. So just to finish off here, right? What are some tools to do just that? I've added this block on top on this table. We can share out these slides. Get your core value, get your definition, and then build out what it is we're doing and why, right? Same with the practice plan, right? Just like, here's a random drill, and here's a random drill, and here's a random drill. There's a consistency, there's a flow, and you do it over and over again. You don't just do, on my run, we're fit now, great news, everyone. It's consistency, it's building. And what are you doing the same with your culture, right? Is the cheer the same? Is the slogan the same? Is the message the same, right? Have your players build out things. I play whatever sport because. Learn from them why they do it. Know what they're doing. Why did they do it, right? Fun activity, share out, right? Ask players to write down what matters most to them as a student, as an athlete, as a person. Have those conversations so you know what are the parts going into the whole of your culture. When we talk about defining success, start this now. At the end of the summer, I will know I've been successful if, and then keep asking, like what does that mean? Oh, I will have, done well. What does well mean? Right? Break it down so you know when it's happening, so that when you speak to someone, they said, well, I went for a run. You're like, that's great, because you said success would be going for a run 3 times a week. Wow, that was successful. You had a successful week. Well done. And now your culture can say, oh, all my players are doing successful things. Every week we are successful. Okay. So that's kind of where we're going to leave it here for today, right? This is kind of your toe in the water around intentional culture creation. I can't push you all enough to really ask yourself what your core values are. Really define them. Really think about what they look like so that you can align your team, align your staff. You can start modeling them, adding personnel into that, right? And then rewarding it. And you'll be able to build that intentional culture. We do this type of work in person, online, year round, across the States, in different formats. Please reach out to me if this is something you want to continue hearing about, want to continue talking about. We will continue talking about it. We will be back here in 2 weeks' time, talking about talking. We'll be talking about communication and feedback, and would love for you all to join. This is my email. Reach out. Like us on the social media, and thank you so much for joining us today and being a part of this ongoing series. Now more than ever, right? How you lead matters, and we hope we can help you in doing that. Thank you so much.